Welcome to the 800 Credit Score Man Show. I am your host, Kevin King. He is I and I am him. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming in and tuning to the 800 Credit Score Man, a show that airs every Saturday at 1:30 Central Standard Time. That's 2:30 on the East Coast. So, have you ever been told that your spouse's credit is your credit? Do you believe just because your husband or your wife has good credit that means that you have good credit? Do you as a couple have the same credit? Well, today we discuss the intricacies of spousal credit, couples credit, and we explore if your spouse is dragging down your credit score. Yes, let me repeat that. We're going to discuss if your spouse is dragging down your credit score. Now, I know that some people out there, especially the single people, are asking why this topic, and you're ready to tune out right now, but don't do that. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. If you listen regularly to my show, you know that I drop little pearls every show that may help you now or help you in the future. So if you ever plan on getting married, you may be engaged right now, or maybe you just want to get married. You're wishing for it. It might be really soon, or maybe it's in the far distance future. You need to keep it locked right here. And fellas, let me tell you this. A young lady wrote an article recently in the New York Post, and she said that she wouldn't even date a guy that had a credit score less than 700. So that's something that you need to be aware of out there because it shrinks your dating pool. So at 700, from 7 to 750, you're considered to have good credit. The average score in America is 695. And between 650 and 700, you're considered to have fair credit. You can get things like a car with no problem. You can get finance for a home, no problem, between 650 and 700. And then the 750 to 850, the highest it can go, that's considered to excellent credit. So stay locked, stay tuned, and listen to the things that we're going to discuss today about your spouse and how it affects your credit altogether. So let's just go ahead and get into the show. And I may have, or maybe I haven't mentioned before, that I have about 15 show topics on any given week to have for you guys on a Saturday, again, at 1:30 Central Standard Time. And this was not one of them. This was not one of the topics. But this week I was speaking to someone, and she mentioned that she wanted to get her credit right before she got married. So that made me think about, maybe doing a show around this. So that conversation sparked my creative juices, and I decided to scrap my original show and save it for a different date. So that's what brings us here right now today. And I wrote about this subject a long time ago, probably a year or so ago. I wrote about this subject. You'll be able to read what I wrote on my blog. Go to my website at www.creditscoreman.com after the show, and I'll put it up on my website, and you'll be able to read also what I wrote when it comes to is your spouse dragging down your credit score. And you may have heard before. Before I do this, I want to apologize right now. I got a couple guests in the studio today named Cameron and Carter. So if you hear some bumping or you hear me yell at my kids, do not judge me. Don't judge me, y'all. These are my kids, and you are feel free. We family, right? This is a family show. Feel free to come, and you can babysit my kids between 12 noon and say 2:30 on any Saturday you want to. Just give me a holler, and you'll be able to come do that. But I got some special guests in the studio today, so I may have to take a pause for a minute and try to give somebody the daddy look. You know how that goes. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and let's go ahead and start discussing this. So you may have heard before, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine, or what's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours, or some variation of that. So while I was doing some research for the show, I found out that it's actually biblical. I had no idea. I'm sure you biblical scholars out there knew that it was in the Bible, but I had no idea that was actually in the Bible. So while I was doing my research, I know Monique Spells and probably Francine Bergens, they probably knew those things, but I did not know those things. So John 17:10, it actually states in the King James Version, it says it like this: "And all mine are thine, and thine are mine, and I am glorified in them." Now, in the New International Version, it says, all I have is yours, and all you have is mine, and glory has come to me through them. So it actually says that in the Bible. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours is actually biblical. So let's discuss, is that the case when it comes to your actual credit score and your credit report? So let's deal with the question. Is this true for your credit report? And the answer simply is yes and no. So that's not a simple answer, right? Yes and no. Does your spouse credit affect your credit as well? So let's deal with the no portion of this. No, your credit history and score are not automatically combined once you get married. Once you get married and you say I do, or you jump the broom, or whatever you do on the beach or in a church or wherever it is, you get married at the courthouse, and it's not automatically combined. So things that you've had in the past on your credit report, good or bad, whether it's a car or a student loan or old home or whatever it is, it's not automatically placed on your spouse's credit now that you guys are married. However, it can and will affect you once you begin to combine assets. And that's where it comes into affecting your credit and what you can do as far as navigating the credit system and getting things, buying things, and qualifying for homes and things of that nature. That's when it starts to affect you in that regard. So let me jump right to, let's look at it this way. Is your spouse dragging down your credit score? Again, in a word, no, it is not. But here's how it does. So when you go and apply for something together, as a couple, both of you have to sign on it, maybe because, you both need the incomes to get whatever it is that you're trying to get. And that could be simply as a car, or it could be something as, as simple as a car, or you can be doing it for a mortgage. And you both need to apply so you can qualify money-wise or income-wise. Then that's when it starts to affect your credit. And here's what happens when you do those things. So when you go into, let's just talk about an automobile right quick. So if you go in and you have a lot of things in your credit, you got student loans and, a bunch of credit cards or whatever, and you may have a decent credit score. Just because you have a lot of debt doesn't mean that you have a bad credit score. They are not equal at all. They're not equated at all. There's no correlation between debt necessarily and you having a bad credit score or a good credit score. A lot of people that have no debt at all have a really bad credit score, because your credit score is based off of your payment history. So if you have no debt and you're not paying anyone, then no one has anything to judge you off of. And believe me, you are being judged. That's just the way it goes. You're being judged in this regard. So those people that, they may make a lot of money, or they may make a little money, and they have no debt, they don't owe any credit cards, or have a car that's financed or anything of that nature, then those people may have a low credit score simply because they're not using credit. They're not utilizing it. So if you go in and you buy a car, but you have a lot of debt and what have you, so you need both incomes. You need your income and your spouse's income to qualify for this particular loan, then that's when it starts to affect you. So if you have a good score, and say you have a good score as like a 725 or something of that nature, but your spouse has a score at a 625, then that's when it comes into play. When both of you guys sign on to those documents, they have several different ways they can look at it. And typically, they don't look at it in the most favorable way for the consumer. So it may be your car. So let's say you are the wife in the scenario, and you have the better credit score. So if you have the better credit score in this scenario, and your husband signs on to the account as well, they may not take your credit score of 725. They may utilize his credit score of 625. Now you say, why would they do that? Of course they'll do that because they can charge more interest and they can make more money. And that's really what happens when you go into a situation like that. And that's how your spouse's credit can affect your credit. So that's something that you need to really be aware of. And I want to mention really quickly that recently The Federal Reserve, I meant to mention this earlier, but the Federal Reserve Board conducted a study in 2015, and they looked at couples' credit scores. And you know what they found is this, and this is why it's important. And the young lady was really smart in talking about, she won't date a guy with a credit score less than 700. What they found in this particular study is that couples with credit scores over 750, they likely were to stay together. Now, if you have a credit score over 750 and your spouse has a credit score over 750, then you're more likely to stay together. Conversely, they found that couples with a credit score of 600 or less, if you had a 600 or less, which would be considered poor or bad credit, you were 3 times more likely to split up. 3 times more likely to break up because of money. Because it's going to come down to money and how you utilize your money, how you govern your money, how you budget your money, and if you're good with it or not. So I guess part of what this study is also saying is that some people just aren't good with money. And if you aren't good with money, then oftentimes your credit score is a reflection of that. So if you have a sub 600 score and your spouse has a sub 600 score, then you're 3 times as likely to go ahead and get a divorce. The absolute number one reason has been for decades for people getting a divorce is because of money. So it's not always that you don't have enough. It may be how you spend it, how you utilize it. And those are the things that are happening. In this particular study done by the Federal Reserve Board in 2015 actually speaks directly to that. They speak directly to that same fact. So it's a good idea for you to get your credit scores up, not only for your sake, but maybe for the sake of your marriage as well. So make sure you guys listen to the show. Listen to the show weekly. It's podcast. You can catch it on Spreaker at any time. You can catch it right there at www.spreaker.com. You can search for 800 Credit Score Man, and you can get my show. Or go ahead and follow. If you follow, then every time I post something to Spreaker.com, you're going to get an alert. And you can also catch it on iTunes. Catch the 800 Credit Score Man show on iTunes. It's always available about 30 minutes or so after the show airs on Spreaker on Saturdays at 1:30 Central Standard Time, as well as on SoundCloud. So you can catch me any of those places. If you're looking for me, you have no excuse at all. You can definitely catch me there. So I think I mentioned also that the average score in America is 695. So the lady is being a little, she wants you to have a 700 or higher in this particular article. So I think that's a good gauge. If you are sitting at a 620, then you need to move your credit score. You need to get it up, only for your sake, because of course it's going to save you money. You need about a 640, maybe a 650 to qualify for a mortgage if you're looking to buy a home one day. So you need to get your credit scores up, and again, it's going to save you money. You can go back and listen to a couple of the other shows where I break down absolutely dollars and cents how getting a better credit score saves you money. So let's jump into. I want to pause right here, and I just want to go ahead and do the question of the day today. It's a little lengthy, so I want to go ahead and do the question of the day just about a minute or so earlier than we normally would. So the question of the day, I told you guys that we will hear from Brandon again. If you listened a few shows ago, Brandon had a question, and I answered his question on the show. And I told you that he had 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions, and I was going to revisit Brandon yet again. So he's back, Brandon from Illinois, and he asks, should I space big purchases and new credit out? And if so, by how much? And he gave an example of a car and a house, a new credit card, all in the same year. And is that a bad idea? Well, first of all, that's a great question. That's a great question, Brandon, because oftentimes individuals go out and they just start applying everywhere and getting everything that they want and their heart desires at the same time. So you should definitely space them out. To answer your question directly,